to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a baller.
We're back here on the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. It's post-NFL draft, but perhaps more importantly, we're recording on Jason's birthday.
Happy birthday to me.
This is Jason.
Thanks, Frosty.
Actually still speaking, right? This is you?
This is me, yeah.
People don't know this. So Jason, very lovable guy, very huggable guy on his birthday. Mm-hmm. But you do something on your birthday for the whole week that I think a lot of people don't really understand. So anything special this week for birthday week?
I am concluding birthday week upon my birthday. It's the week leading up, and no, we did not do anything special. I had a lot of my family out of town this week, so I just kind of got to watch the draft more than usual.
Well, congrats to you. You're, a young 41. And you're doing great. You're doing great. But this is a jam-packed show. We're doing a rookie mock draft. It's me, Kyle, it's Jason, it's Mike, and Betz, all four of us.
The biggest Dynasty episode yet.
Betz, you probably have to be feeling the best after the draft as an Eagles fan. Are you still levitating?
I mean, come on, man. It's Howie's world. Everyone else is just living in it. It's fun, man. It's a fun couple of years. And what's funny is last year, during the NFL draft, there was a lot of uncertainty about what Philly was going to do. Is Hurts the guy? Is Hurts not the guy? And then they traded for A.J. freaking Brown. I was like, okay, this is fun. And so following it up 2 years in a row with that, I'm feeling pretty good.
Well, what do you say then to the rumor mill that had the Eagles almost signing Allen Robinson?
Mm-hmm.
And then L.A. and Cooper Kupp, they swooped in at the last minute, threw the huge amount of money at Robinson, and he ends up going to be to the L.A. Rams because, like, you follow the dominoes. That's what led to A.J. Brown being on the Philadelphia Eagles. So that is how good of a GM Howie is right now.
What a dummy. What a dummy.
He just backs in to great things.
Yeah, he backed into these picks, too. I mean, obviously he traded up one spot to the 9 for Jalen Carter, but he didn't do anything but just make the right pick that fell to him at 30. And,
hey, in today's NFL, man, that's all it takes. Like, you just let these other guys make mistakes. Like in your Dynasty rookie draft, you let these other guys make mistakes. You just take the players that fall
That's
to
a
you.
Professional.
And we win some championships, boys.
I mean, so on the show, we're going to be walking through the first 2 rounds, giving some of our takes. You guys have been working through your rookie rankings, your Dynasty startup rankings, your Superflex rankings. We'll talk about that whole process. You can get all of those in the Ultimate Draft Kit Plus. Guys, this is like go time for us as a company to really work through every single team. You guys are about to start statting out everybody. So I'm just going to say for Mike and Jason here, this part of the process, the draft is over. What's your favorite part of just putting the grind to Ultimate Draft Kit Plus?
Ooh, my favorite part is I'll go with 2 for here. Number 1, the numbers. I mean, numbers do lie. We know that, but I'm going to go with the old adage of numbers don't lie. We get very surprised when we put our stats in and find certain players ranked away because in your heart you're like, well, no, this player, that's a superstar. They have to be ranked real high. And then you find out they aren't ranked nearly as high as you are. And then it's really getting into the cracks of the teams and finding the opportunity for newer players or secondary players to take that step because that's more where fantasy championships are won. Is finding those guys that you're like making the proclamation that player X by the end of the year is going to be a top 24 player. Like, that's ridiculous. How can you possibly say that about that player? And yet every single year we have players sneak into the top 24, and those are on the championship winning rosters.
Yeah, when we're grinding all the data to create the Ultimate Draft Kit, it's the stuff that is revealed to us that we weren't trying to do that is always the most fun part. It is oftentimes things that you thought your drag and drop style rankings would disagree with, or you're working through certain teams, certain depth charts. You're looking at their tendencies, the coaching change, the transformation of a certain team from running to passing, and then all of a sudden You're like, oh my goodness, this player's opportunity is outrageous. And I didn't realize that because, when you're just drag and dropping casual rankings and saying, I like this guy more, I follow football, I kind of like this, you don't get those same realizations so strongly, so, locked in stone, where it's like, this player's opportunity is clear, the path is awesome.
I remember a player last year, Jason, that in our ranks, you just buried this player. And it wasn't because you hated the talent, but Deontay Johnson, you looked at the situation, Kenny Pickett. We talk all the time about rookie quarterbacks not sustaining production. And when you setted him out, you just gave him a ton of targets. But you kind of said, like, hey, these aren't going to be the most efficient targets. This is going to be good. This is a player that I'm going to be lower on. And I'm not here to tell you, great job on your birthday.
Yeah, but you should. So say it.
You caught as many touchdowns as him, Jason.
Yes, I did. I was awesome last year. And so part of the process of the Ultimate Draft Kit for me, I think myself, Mike, Andy, we all have different processes. But for me, I go each team, it depends on the quarterback. Certain quarterbacks, I stat the quarterback first based on historical data and what we know of an unexpected situation. And certain times I look at the team when it's a common, we know what this team is, we know what they're going to do. I will stat all the receivers, all the running backs first, and let that dictate what the quarterback does. So in the case of Kenny Pickett last year, I gave him rookie quarterback numbers because that's realistic. He wasn't going to be some outlier, outrageous, quarterback that is breaking the rookie mold. And when you do that and then you divide that up by a team, there just wasn't a realistic outcome for a superstar from that receiving core. So that's kind of the thing that helps with our accuracy. And, if you don't have the Ultimate Draft Kit yet, you should. The UDK Plus already has our Dynasty rankings, has our Dynasty Startup rankings, has our Rookie rankings, has our Superflex rankings coming out. It should be live today when you're listening right now. So check it out at theultimatedraftkit.com.
Yeah, we just finished our post-draft update. There's new new rookie mock draft.
You and Mookie Betz over there.
Mookie Blaylock.
Sorry. Wrong Mookie.
Risers and fallers, so all of those things in the Ultimate Draft Kit. Before we get into our rookie mock draft, I have a quick question. And it's real simple. What rookie's stock changed the most after the NFL draft? So this kind of solidified in your mind. Maybe there's some questions. But now, based on the draft capital, where they went, this changed. So, Betz, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I'm going to throw out Jaden Reed, the wide receiver out of Michigan State. He landed with Green Bay. We all thought, early in the first, they might take Jackson Smith and Jigba. That was the common mock draft that you would see. That's the pick. Turns out they did not agree. They went defense and then made Jaden Reed the 50th pick overall off the board. And you kind of had to raise your eyebrows and say, whoa, that is a lot of draft capital for a guy that I don't think many projected to go that high. And you look at the depth chart there in Green Bay, we know it's Christian Watson, probably the wide receiver one, but behind him, it's wide open. So when they throw a 50th overall pick at Jaden Reed, a guy who broke out early, can play all over the field, can play in the slot as early as year one, the opportunity is certainly there.
Yeah, he is the clear answer to this question. I was upset that you had him in here, and I think it's important to be honest with why players like this get misvalued in rookie drafts. It's because the Dynasty community, of which we are a part of.
Yeah, we're part of the problem.
Absolutely, we are part of the problem. The Dynasty community did not scout him well enough, did not talk about him in the pre-draft process well enough. So when he goes number 50 overall in the NFL draft, his top 50 selection, you are dealing with someone that we just didn't know the ins and outs of. You've heard Jordan Addison and Marvin Mims got talked up and Jalen Hyatt got talked down and all these opinions. And so you're familiar. And Jaden Reed comes on the board in the NFL draft, and most people are unfamiliar with the name. I remember when Brugler's The Beast came out. And I'm digging through that. He was a top 10 wide receiver in his rankings pre-draft. That was the first time that he came really onto my radar. I hadn't scouted him at that point. So if we're not scouting him, because we're not the NFL, I'm not scouting 400, 500 players here. I take a look at who, most lists say are going to be the best wide receivers. I scout them. I give my opinions, yada, yada. But when now the average player hasn't heard about this guy leading up to the draft, they have too long a time reacting and moving him up appropriately. So, if you look at our rankings, I think he is appropriately highly ranked.
Would you take him? Because we're going to talk about this, but he's creeping up to some drafts where he's a fringe 1-2 pick, like at the beginning of the second round. So it's hard for me to look at a player that's older that doesn't have the insane production of some of these other players and to say, oh, he can go in the first round. But we did get news about Jordan Love and the Packers having extending him another year, team-friendly deal. So at least we get to know what is this Packers team with Jordan Love for a year plus. But he slots in behind Christian Watson. But yes, definitely rose a ton. What about you, Mike?
I was going to throw in, he is older, and yet he had a really good breakout age. Like he's a really interesting prospect because you have the things that we don't like. He's not an early declare. He was a 4-year player. Not that's just like a slight red flag because we like the younger players who are dominating younger. He had to transfer and missed a year because of the transfer. He did have a season in 2021 where he was over 1,000 and had the 10 touchdowns. But you have all of those, but it's not overwhelming production like some of the other wide receivers. And he's old, but he did break out kind of young. And he's like this weird hodgepodge mixture. And then you got the draft capital thrown in. So I'm in. I'm perfectly fine with Jaden Reed going around the 1-2 turn.
Here's a perfect example because this happens every year, and we react too late. But when Terry McLaurin was drafted way higher than almost anybody pre-draft was talking about him, he was drafted so high by the Washington. I don't know if they were the football team at that point or whatever.
Yeah, but the Manders.
The Manders took him really high, and it was unexpected for most in the Dynasty community. He didn't have a bunch of college production, and, there were reasons to not love him. But it turned out that the NFL team that spent high draft capital on him knew what they were doing, and they weren't just listening to Dynasty podcasts, and you should have drafted Terry McLaurin based on what the NFL did, and that's kind of the situation with Reed.
The only thing I'll say about McLaurin is he was going late third round, even undrafted. And so Reed's getting pushed up at a place where people are expecting him to, Amari Rodgers was a player 2 years ago. They were like, hey, in the slot,
yes.
He has Aaron Rodgers, can be fine. So
to answer your question on should he go up in the first round, I have him at pick 17 overall. So I've got him in the middle of the second.
I'm fine with that.
We just drafted him, Mike and I, in a team we co-manage. We got him at the 2-3 turn, 212. So he's basically the last pick of the second round. His value is not costing a lot. He's going to go, I think, in most drafts just like Terry McLaurin did.
All right, Mike, you have a wide receiver that shocked all of us. He was the 5th wide receiver off the board in the draft.
Yeah, it's Jonathan Mingo for me, where he was someone that was kind of becoming more and more interesting. A lot of our friends in the Dynasty community were, really revealing some things about Mingo that I hadn't thought of. And you're like, okay, well, he's now really on the radar. Let's see where he goes in the draft. And he went very high in the draft. He becomes what I really like. He becomes the future number one for the quarterback that went number one overall. These two players get to grow their careers together. I love that. His athletic profile is really off the charts considering he's 6'2", 220 and ran a 4.46. Like his speed score is 111. That's a 91st percentile for his size. He has that quick twitch. He has the explosiveness because his vertical and his broad jump scored really, really well. So perfect place, perfect situation. You have Frank Reich and company and the depth chart around him is, it's gross. Like you have Adam Thielen, who I can't believe that he got the contract that he got. Chark is there, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Chark is
one
there.
year deal.
And that's really.
You're burying the lead, though.
Oh, okay. Give me the lead.
I personally don't want to root for Mingo because he's buried Terrace Marshall, but I think he was buried his rookie year, so it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So, but like, it will be super interesting to me. How do they use Mingo? Because he's big, 6'2", 220, and do they put Adam Thielen exclusively into the slot, or do they experiment, put Chark and Thielen on the outside, and then you put you put Mingo into the slot and you try and run him like Cooper Kupp? I think that there are so many interesting things that the Panthers can do, and it's going to be he won't have a Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson breakout year one. I don't think that's in the range of outcomes for him, but I will still draft him very, very high in my rookie drafts because I think second year, third year, he can become a top 15, top 12 guy.
All right, Jason, who you got?
For me, it was Jalen Hyatt. Well, other than Jaden Reed, but Jalen Hyatt was someone that, you know, in Dynasty startup ranks pre-NFL draft, I've seen him as high as the number 3 wide receiver overall, and then he fell in the draft. He went as the 10th wide receiver drafted. Many teams that could use a wide receiver, needed a wide receiver, took a wide receiver, chose to not grab Jalen Hyatt.
And the NFL loves speed.
Yeah, so, you know, there were plenty of yellow and red flags in Jalen Hyatt's, you know, in his profile. The fact that he comes from the gimmicky offense, the fact that he plays almost exclusively in the slot, the amount of times he's set up in stack formation where he can't really get pressed, and that doesn't happen in the NFL. The NFL, with their actions, said that those worry them, and that's why they took other players. So he certainly fell a little bit in my rankings, and at first glance, when he was drafted, I was like, well, at least he's going to a really good situation, a team that is desperate for a wide receiver. And that is true. But also when I started, you know, as we've talked about, statting out these teams, breaking down their depth charts, when I stared at the Giants depth chart of wide receivers, I was like, they have 6 legitimate. It is clogged there right now. And specifically, their slot position, they've got like 5 slot
they
receivers.
Got them all. They signed everyone in the NFL.
It's not a real clear, easy path forward. I think that if he is a dude, if he's as good as some people hoped he was pre-draft, then he will take that spot. But the fact that he went 10th, plummeted in the draft, says I'm less the probability of him being a star has lowered for me drastically.
When we profiled him, I mean, he was an outlier in itself. When you look at size, weight, you know, everything else, it's like, okay, he has to be a Deshaun Jackson who was an outlier in himself. Like that's what he has to be. So, yeah, it's not great. They did trade up 16 spots, and I like the story.
Yeah, we like that.
Brian Dable made the trade. I don't know if you guys saw that news. Like, he was the one who usually head coaches don't do that, but he was the one that made the call. So
that's cool.
Whatever that means, but Jalen Hyatt is a fun player. Like, we're rooting for him to be something in the NFL. I think the Giants need speed, but
yeah, but you know who's more fun than Jalen Hyatt? Your answer.
My answer. So I put Anthony Richardson as locked in QB1, and in Superflex leagues, like locked in. If you don't want to take Bijan, you can take him 101. The landing spot, guys. The landing spot for me in Indianapolis was a dream. That was where I wanted Stroud to go for a while. I would have been super happy there, but Steichen and the rest of that team, they've done interviews where at first, like, they were worried, some people in the front office, about completion percentage. I totally get that. And then,
Throwing.
And then Steichen, I think this is a Steichen move. Like, I saw what I could do with rookie Justin Herbert. I saw what I could do with Jalen Hurts. And it's like a project for him. So, like, that might be like a very...
like this old house?
It's a move of hubris, maybe, at some level, if you think he's a bad prospect. Or for fantasy football, which is what we care about, like, they're going to use this dude, and the quote was right that they're going to use him right off the bat. Betz, isn't that what they said?
His development is so key to the franchise's future. He gets better by playing. Irsay said he will start this season, and Steichen has said basically that you're not going to get better unless you're out there on the field. So at first, pre-draft, some of these quotes, I thought, oh, Minshew's there. He can start behind Minshew. I think he's the week 1 starter.
It got to the point that even if you've been listening to the Dynasty podcast, I'm very critical and nervous about Anthony Richardson of will he develop from what we saw as a passer in Florida, will he develop into the pros? Even with all of those concerns, the landing spot to me is just, it's too good. I caved. I moved Anthony Richardson up to my number 1 quarterback because you got to take the shot, because Richardson could become a league-winning quarterback where Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud, I think, will be good, but they won't win championships like Richardson could.
Yeah, and this is the perfect conversation, too, of, like, real NFL versus fantasy, because the throwing is still a concern. Like, that didn't change in a week, the fact that he went 4th overall. But it almost, I don't want to say doesn't matter, but he's going to run, and Steichen's going to use him in that way. And so, obviously, we all know what that does for fantasy. So, I agree. Locked in QB1 for me, and I think personally, and I'm sure you guys all agree too, like tier 1 by himself, then the rest of the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I feel that way. Do you guys feel that way? Like he's by himself as a rushing quarterback compared to these other two.
Oh, for sure. I mean, because of his rushing baseline, the others can't have the ceiling unless they end up becoming Drew Brees Hall of Famer, and that's just not – this wasn't a draft year. Even though it was a loaded wide quarterback class, it didn't have a Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, and Andrew Luck. Like, there wasn't the prospect. Even though Bryce Young was most people's one, he's still not considered in that category.
And the Texans, they destroyed my dreams, my personal fantasy dreams of they took C.J. Stroud, which was the right thing. And then you know what you should do next year? Well, there's a wide receiver that C.J. Stroud played with in college that's going to come out and he's going to be a top 5 pick. You should draft that guy. And they said, no, we're going to send our first-round pick away to the Arizona Cardinals, so that dream is gone.
They literally could have drafted JSN
Yes.
at 12 and then Harrison next year with
Yes.
their top pick.
And been out of control.
But they've got Mingo.
No, the Mingo went to the Panthers.
Oh, that's right. Mingo's at the Panthers,
They have
and Harrison will hopefully go to the Cardinals.
They have Tank Dell. They got the smallest player in the draft.
Yeah.
That's who it's. So I'm excited for you Cardinals because you possibly have the first 2 picks in the draft.
Yes, we do.
You also could be starting all over and, taking Caleb Williams, taking Marvin here. Like, that would be pretty cool.
It's a win-win situation. Reminds me of the Eagles where they had a lot of capital and they had Jalen Hurts, and they weren't sure, is he going to be able to be the dude, or do we have enough capital to replace him with the number 1 pick next year? Same situation. Either Kyler comes back, he either starts earlier than we expect or plays really good this season. We win more games. We don't have the number 1 pick. We don't need the number 1 pick. We get a bunch of ammunition to load him up with guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., or we get the number 1 pick because we suck, and we can trade Kyler for something to start over with Caleb Williams.
All right, before we hit our rookie mock draft, let's take a quick break.
We are so excited about the updates coming to the Ultimate Draft Kit and the UDK Plus. What am I talking about? Post-draft updates to the rankings, the Dynasty Startup rankings, the rookie rankings, and guess what? You asked for it. We're bringing it. Superflex rankings as well. All of it available at ultimatedraftkit.com. All of it updating all off-season long. We are the place to be if you want to be connected to everything going on in the fantasy football world. Get the UDK right now. Lowest possible price, ultimatedraftkit.com.
You guys are in the throngs of it right now, drafting. Like I'm still in the middle of a couple drafts. We're in a league where I'm picking right before Jason and Mike. So this is going to be good for us that we've gone through in the main Dynasty League. But I realize there are a couple things that still have yet to happen in Dino Jr. Or do you guys just don't even care?
We're at the 312. I know the player that I think we should take, but I don't want to say his name.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Also, we are at
I'm going to message Jason right now.
We are at a place where we have won the championship 3 years in a row. Champ. So I don't care what you do.
Here, Jay, look at that name and tell me what you think.
All right, let me take a look here. Clicking.
This is really good.
It's a good one.
Yeah, right.
It's a good one.
All right, let's mock it up.
The Fantasy Footballers Mock Draft.
We're going to do a 2-round rookie mock draft. We have a full one in the UDK Plus and the Dynasty Pass, and you're going to get our rookie rankings, everything in that. So we're going to walk through these picks. The order is going to be Mike, me, Jason, then Betz. And I'm approaching this as who's next on my board. I'm not thinking of like who did I pick and who's on my team because it's just hard to kind of keep track of that. But we will post this online so you guys can actually see the picks. But Mike's going to go first for us. He's got the 101.
And we're going single quarterback.
Single quarterback here. We'll put out some super flex ones too. And Mike, I know that you are just stressing out.
It's fantastic to have the 101 this year because you, even in Superflex, you're not like, man, do I go the quarterback because longevity? No, it's Bijan Robinson and log out. You've done very, very well in the draft. He went to the perfect spot for fantasy football, terrible for real life, but the Atlanta Falcons and Arthur, the plan will be to run run some more, and they will do it successfully despite they will run directly into their sub-500 record.
Whoa. Our win total got boosted up. I don't know if you saw that post-draft.
No, I didn't.
It was at 7.5. Some books have it 8 or 8.5.
Oh, okay. So I could take the under now.
It's not a bad play if you want to do it. But fourth place schedule, NFC South. We'll talk about that on the DFS and betting podcast. So Mike takes Bijan Robinson first. I am up next, and I think this is an interesting discussion because the two names that people are sorting through, I'm assuming, are Jahmyr Gibbs and Jackson Smith and Jigba. I'm on team with a wide receiver. I don't care what the landing spot is. That talent matters so much more than landing spot that I'm willing to look at this Seattle offense and say, what if this offense just rolls? What if Tyler Lockett ages out in a year or two? And I have a player that will be on this team for a while. Yes, they're going to have to figure out Geno Smith beyond the next 2 to 3 years. But what if this is just a good offense? And I think NFL standards, we love the Seahawks this year. Like, we think that they're going to be really good. It's probably painful as Cardinals fans to say that, but like, they're a really fun team for fantasy we're going to be talking about. So Jackson Smith and Jigba is what I've done in a couple leagues. Jeremy and I did it in the Main Ballers Dynasty League. We were at the 102, and we went JSN.
You guys did not hesitate either.
No, we had talked about it for a while.
To be fair, their team, and this is where, while we're doing this draft, we don't have a team. We're not a championship contender or a rebuild or looking for running backs. And you should pay attention to this because you should act like that in your drafts. It's usually much better to take your team needs a little bit out of it and draft the best players available. But your window, I think, is something you do consider. And in your case, your guys' team is in a rebuild. You've torn it down and you're building it up. And so running back's shelf life versus a wide receiver's shelf life, if you get 3 or 4 awesome years from Jahmyr Gibbs and 5 or 6 or 7 really good years from JSN, when your window starts opening up, probably better to take a wide receiver.
Yeah, and I've said this before on the podcast. We just needed a hit. And I feel like the probability of Jackson Smith and Jigba as the wide receiver one in this class on a good football team, a good offense, like I think the probability is super high. And we still like Gibbs. Dear Lord, we got trashed all over Twitter about the Lions and Lions takes. We love Jahmyr Gibbs on this podcast. We think he's great. I just think for our team.
Because we're a fantasy football podcast.
Yes, and we like teams. We like players that catch the ball. So, Jason, you're up at 1-3.
Well, I want to hear before I move on, because I know before the show, Mike was saying he has some concerns about JSN and his landing spot. Obviously, he's going to be exclusively a slot player this year, considering the landing spot and what he did in college. But let me hear your anti-JSN takes.
Let me slow. Hold on. I did not.
Why do you hate Jackson Smith and
Mike.
Jigba?
And I said, I just was voicing some concerns. I still said JSN is my number one wide receiver because I'm with Kyle. I will take the talent of the player over the landing spot. That conversation evolved because I was saying I have Jahmyr Gibbs at number 2 now. And here's my concerns for Jackson Smith and Jigba is Tyler Lockett is under contract this year. He's going to play. Tyler Lockett is under contract for 2 more years. Now, next year, he would be a $14 million dead cap. That's not nothing. Now, 2025, it is a $7 million dead cap.
Still expensive.
But here's the thing. Tyler Lockett is still one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. DK Metcalf is not going anywhere. He just got re-upped. He's young. He's a superstar. But Lockett has just been so good over and over and over. And like how JSN isn't going to push Lockett or Metcalf off the field in a 2 wide receiver set because he's going to be the slot wide receiver. Will they actually up what they've run? I was trying to quickly find their 3 wide receiver sets.
65%. They run 65% of their snaps in 3 wide receiver sets. And Pete Carroll was asked the question directly about whether or not they plan to throw the ball more, use 3 wide receiver sets more, that they've got JSN. And obviously you can't always trust a coach, but he said no. They're running the same system. And I don't blame them. I think they're going to have a really good offense. They drafted Charbonnet, and their running game is going to be really good as well. There's no reason to say we're now a pass-happy team. That's not what Pete Carroll wants to run. He just has – they had nobody behind Lockett and Metcalf. They needed a wide receiver 3 desperately, and they got a great one. I do agree his landing spot is not as great for year one, but I'm betting on the talent. He is the wide receiver 1 for all of us. And if he's not your 2, he'll be your 3. He's the 2 here. I'm up with the 3rd pick, so I will take the pick that the Lions should not have taken, Jahmyr Gibbs. Also, I know Lions fans, I know it's hard to hear people say what a bad pick it was, and Jahmyr Gibbs is so good. He's going to be great. You are going to love him. What an awful pick it was for a team building and wins and losses perspective, but for fantasy, love it. I know you can't take hearing that, and so I'm not going to shy away from saying the truth. You should be upset with your team. You deserve that. You deserve to actually be able to talk back to your franchise. But I actually moved Jahmyr Gibbs. He was one of my risers. When we did our startup rankings folding in the rookies, so now our dynasty startups have them all interwoven, all the positions. That was what revealed to me that I do have Jahmyr Gibbs as more valuable right now in a dynasty startup than Jackson Smith and Jigba. So he is my number 2. If I was at 2, I would have taken Jahmyr Gibbs. There is a plan in place for Gibbs, for the Lions. I believe they are going to throw the ball a ton, and I'm going to put his baseline at a 15% target market share. If he gets that, which that's what I believe happens, he will be awesome for fantasy football. He doesn't need to carry the ball that much. Targets are worth so much more than a carry, and he should be great.
So we have second-year wide receiver. Now Jamal Williams is stuck in my head. Jameson Williams, wide receiver, was their first-round pick. He is suspended for 6 games. And last year, when we think of DeAndre Swift's season as a whole, you're like, oh, that was so bad. DeAndre Swift, in 14 games, appeared in 34% of the snaps for the Detroit Lions. He had 70 targets. 70. That's ridiculous. Like you bump those snaps up and you play all the games. And Jahmyr Gibbs could see 100 targets plus this year.
I mean, that's definitely in the range of outcomes. You mentioned the wide receivers. Let's just go down that path, right? Amon-Ra gonna get a ton of volume. Jameson Williams suspended 6 games. We don't even know if he's good in the NFL, right? Like,
correct.
Still, people assume he's gonna be good. We loved his talent in the tape, but we just don't know. Then, ready for this, boys? Khalif Raymond, Josh Reynolds, the ghost of Marv Jones, and Tom Kennedy. So, I mean, give David Montgomery 250 carries, and please give Jahmyr Gibbs all the targets. So, completely different conversation. Fantasy, incredible landing spot, incredible draft capital. Love it.
How dare
real
you?
life.
Yeah, Kyle, I wanted
great.
to know how you felt about hearing the ghost of Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones has been one of your guys for
He's
ever?
awesome. He's awesome. And
Does that hurt you emotionally?
yeah, no, I'm going to stand behind Marvin Jones, the Lion, because the rest of the team I will not stand behind. But no, Betz is right. Like, I have questions about their schedule. So the Lions love your team for fantasy, but it's okay for us to have different takes and say, hey, this wasn't the best team building move for y'all moving forward. Betz, you are at 104 on the clock.
Yeah, I'm just going to make a quick prediction on the DFS and betting show, week 1. I guarantee you Kyle will mention Marvin Jones as like a $350 or $3,500 DK wide receiver play, guaranteed. So we'll come back to that at a later date. Yes. But this is basically the part of the draft where you get to in every 1 QB league and you say, which wide receiver do you prefer? Because Charbonnet's off the board at this point. You can't take him. It's too early for the quarterbacks, in my opinion. So you're basically down to Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, and Jordan Addison. Who do you prefer? I love Jordan Addison coming out. The weight issue is definitely a concern. And the landing spot, to some people, might be a concern because he's playing next to a future Hall of Famer in Justin Jefferson, who's not going anywhere for the next 10 years. But there's no one else in that offense from a wide receiver perspective to play. He should step in right away as the wide receiver 2 across from him. And, you think about the Adam Thielen years with Justin Jefferson. Adam Thielen was plenty fantasy relevant and fantasy viable, a great wide receiver 2 option. So not as high of a ceiling maybe as someone like Quentin Johnston, in my opinion, but a safer floor, and I love Jordan Addison coming out. So I will take him here at the 1.04.
He is who I took. I had the 104 in our main Dynasty League. I drafted him there. I agree with you completely. And I think the situation, the landing spot, is actually – I am on the side that I think it is very good. You've seen some of these rookies come in. The one that comes to mind for me couldn't be much more of a different body type. But when Juju Smith-Schuster came in, it's like, oh, Antonio Brown is there. You know, it's like, what can you do? Well, you know what? When they've got the best wide receiver in the game of football, that's where the defense is. You run the slot and you dominate for a high-powered offense. The Vikings are going to throw the ball a lot. Kirk Cousins is going to be 4,500 yards, and the slot's going to be wide open as the defense has to focus on Justin Jefferson.
I was in a league where Addison was the one that I preferred, and I wanted to get him ahead of because I thought he wouldn't be on the board, and so I did what we said on this podcast. I traded a late second-round pick to move up a couple spots, just 2 spots, to get Addison because I would have been left with somebody else. But strategy-wise, after the first 3 picks, is it going to be these 4 receivers? Like, are these 3 receivers as the next picks? Is like that's what people are sorting through.
That's how I see it. It was supposed to be mine and Jason's sweet, beautiful prince, Zach Charbonnet, and then Pete Carroll had to play the villain yet again and put him into a situation where it's a timeshare at best. And we'll talk Charbonnet when we get there, but you can't draft a known backup running back at the 105 and when there's a first-round wide receiver there. So I'm up at 105. I will take Quentin Johnston. I'm with the other guys. I prefer Jordan Addison, but QJ is not a bad second prize here. He goes into a very good situation. He has a franchise quarterback already, so check that box. We'd love to have that. In front of him, you have Keenan Allen, who is still a good route runner, but he's getting to that age where the Chargers will think about moving on. Mike Williams continues to be unable to stay on the field, and those 2 guys, they will be in front of Quentin to start the year, probably for the majority of the year. I don't think it's going to be a fantastic rookie year for him unless Mike Williams schedules his off weeks to be longer than expected. Like, Mike Williams will miss 2 to 4 games. He could miss more because he's done that before. But long term, I mean, next year, I think that the Chargers could choose to get out of Mike Williams. I think they keep Keenan Allen personally, but they could make the choice to get out of Keenan Allen over Mike Williams or both. Like, they have so many different options here, and the long-term future, the outlook for QJ is glowing. Assuming he can actually be a good player. His situation is good. His talent was good enough that they took him in the first round. The Chargers picked him over Addison, so I'll take the shot.
It is a really easy case to say you should be taking Quentin Johnston ahead of Jordan Addison. I mean, you said most of it, but when you put it all back to back, you go, oh, the Chargers drafted him ahead of Addison, so they like him. He's bigger, and you don't have the weight issues. He's got a better quarterback locked in. Like I don't have any problem if you want to say I'd rather go Johnston over Addison. Agreed. It was just really the skill set belief in the wide receiver that's the difference maker for me.
I think with Johnston, it was scary before the draft of like, okay, if this guy lands with a team that we don't feel confident in the quarterback situation, like I could have seen him drop in the first round, but it was a dream landing spot that just secured him in my mind of like, okay, I thought he was going to be maybe a more boom bust. We didn't love some of the body catching style, but this is a great spot. And I'm just going to follow it up at 106 with Zay Flowers, the next wide receiver off the board. Don't feel as great in terms of target competition, but that offense is going to be so fun. And so fun for you guys to stat out of like, what are they going to do in Baltimore? It's a different offense with Todd Monken at coordinator as opposed to Greg Roman. They're going to use him in creative ways, and his skill set is mini Debo, like at some level. Like he's not just here's a slot wide receiver, they're going to throw him in there. They're going to use him in creative ways. But I did think at this spot and in drafts, Zay Flowers, and I'm starting to look at Anthony Richardson in one quarterback league. So I wanted to get your perspective, Jason, because you're next on the clock.
Yeah, I am. And you know, if you've listened to the episodes in their entire catalog here of this show, that I don't usually like selecting quarterbacks in the first round of a single quarterback startup. Certainly not tight ends in the first round because there are talented running backs and wide receivers. After day one of this year's NFL draft, I was like, oh, baby, we're going to have so much more value than I thought we were going to have in this draft. And then after day two, I was like, oh, no. Oh, no. All the value that we thought was coming is destroyed.
Yeah, because Pete Carroll is a black hole.
Pete Carroll has 2 feet, and he used one to kick Kenneth Walker in the nuts and one to kick Zach Charbonnet in the nuts.
At the same time.
It was incredible. It was a jump kick, splits.
Flying Van Dams.
They were actually standing completely to the peripheral. It was full splits when he did the kick. He is a young old man. Pete Carroll, the happiest coach in the league. And this is how he stays yoga. This is how he stays happy and healthy is ball kicking his players.
Dude, those white Nike Air Monarchs. Oh my gosh, that would hurt so bad.
I hate that I have to hate Pete Carroll.
I know, he's so lovable.
Like he's the nemesis of my team. He keeps destroying players' fantasy value, but I think he's a really good coach.
Yeah, he is.
And he seems like a fun guy.
Yeah, I would love to be coached by him. He loves his players love him. Fun guy, hate his guts. Not really.
So the 107.
So at the 107, though, I start taking what I think are known commodities. I've talked about it. I'm drafting for probability of hit rate. And to me, the 4 first-round wide receivers have a very strong hit rate. Jahmyr Gibbs, strong hit rate. Obviously, Bijan, guaranteed hit rate. Then it falls off a cliff to me. At this point in time, whether you still have Zach Charbonnet next because he was a second-round draft pick, he's on a good offense, or whether he's not even your next running back and you're going to a third-round running back, or you're going to a huge teardrop in wide receivers, I think the probability of everyone else hitting is low. And so I'm taking Anthony Richardson here at the 107. I would not want him ahead of the 4-pack of first-round wide receivers, but he, to me, with his running prowess, is a guarantee, and being the 4th overall pick, it's a guarantee that he will be the starter for years. His leash will be long. Even if he sucks at football and doesn't win games, he will be the starter for 3 or 4 years, and he will run the ball enough and have rushing touchdowns. He'll have fantasy value, so he's my pick.
I love it. Betz, you're up next.
Yeah, and this conversation we just had, like, in the leagues that I'm playing in, and if you haven't, listener, had your rookie draft yet, I'm getting out of town. Like, I'm trying to move these picks for a 2024 first, or package a couple of picks and move up into the 105 range. Like, the tier break is very obvious here. So I hate this pick. I will say that. And I think Jason's going to hate this pick because I'm going to take Dalton Kincaid.
Oh, what a loser. What an idiot. I actually love that
idiot.
pick if I'm in the draft with you.
Yes, but here's my rationale. I don't think, or I'm not sure, but optimistically, I don't think that they view him as a tight end because Dawson Knox just signed an extension. He's clearly under contract. He's there. But Dalton Kincaid is a big slot wide receiver, and he moves that way. So I'm not drafting him to be my tight end. I'm hoping that he turns into a somewhat reliable option in Buffalo's offense. We know they want to throw. They're going to be in the red zone a ton. I think there's a legit chance he just steps on the field and plays right away as a rookie.
I completely understand this pick. I think this pick will happen in a lot of leagues, if not the majority of leagues. This is where you go, okay, well, Dalton Kincaid was a first-rounder. They traded up for him. He's on a great offense. There are a lot of boxes that are checked. Completely understand it. And as a reminder or as knowledge, if you haven't listened to previous episodes, the reason that I don't take that pick here is the probability outcome of a tight end being very relevant for fantasy. It just doesn't really happen. There aren't many of them that happen, and most of them that have, you go, Darren Waller, George Kittle, those aren't guys that we drafted in the first round. Those are guys that you scooped up off of waivers or got in your third round or your rookie drafts way back in the day. They just don't hit, and they don't hit their rookie year. So I feel like most of the time you're burning the pick early, and then you've got a low odds, like a 10, 15% chance of a hit. And I think there are other players on the board for fantasy purposes that are higher than that, but I do understand the argument for it. Connected to Josh Allen, he is not a blocking tight end. He's a move tight end. He will be catching passes. I just think you're going to need a couple years for it to pay off.
And when you're saying hit, Jason, you're saying like top 3 type tight end hit.
Yeah, I'm saying like a difference maker at tight end. If you drafted Evan Ingram, right,
Whoa.
you can say that is a hit. He had
After
one of the
year
best.
one, it was.
He had one of the best rookie seasons of all time. He's played a long career, but ain't nobody happy with. If you go back to that draft and you drafted Evan Ingram, who has been a successful tight end, you burned that pick. There were 100 guys behind him that you would have rather have had.
I will say this: when you buy stock, right, and then it crumbles, you don't lose money until you sell off. I have held Evan Ingram on my dynasty team through everything, and we are back, baby. We are back.
Mike, you're at 109.
All right, here is I'm 100% fine with the Dalton Kincaid pick right there. It's just maybe we keep getting tricked over and over year after year of like, well, look at the circumstance, but I'm with Betz of I think that Kincaid can become the number 2 option behind Stephon Diggs sooner than later for the Buffalo Bills. And here is where the draft just goes of like have your own process, have the guys that you like, just plug your nose and take them because it is why I'm looking at our Ballers Dynasty draft that is already complete, and the guy I'm going to take here at where are we at 108, 109?
109.
He went at 201. And like Dalton Kincaid in our draft went 207. Like so the values are all over the place this year. I'm going to take Jonathan Mingo, the guy that I talked about as my biggest riser. And this is a longer-term pick. It doesn't feel great right now. It won't feel great that if you're in a double flex, maybe you can plug him into your starting lineup. But I do believe long-term that Jonathan Mingo will be a very, very solid fantasy football player. I already kind of gave my case for him already with Bryce Young, so I take him here.
Yeah, the wide receivers here, when you look at Mingo, Jaden Reed, Rashee Rice, Marvin Mims, like the second-round wide receivers, I don't know any of those guys are going to hit. I think Mingo would be at the top based on the draft capital, but man, right now I'm deciding between 2 players. I think this is Charbonnet territory where
that's fine.
Even if I don't like the landing spot, I'm going to get a running back that I just need for my roster, or it's Rashee Rice. Those are the 2 that I'm deciding between.
Interesting. Okay.
And I would take Charbonnet here just because I think a lot of teams are probably going to be needy at running back. And is this a situation where we have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, where Walker ends up being a top 12 back, and you still can get top 20 to top 24 value, each year with somebody like A.J. Dillon, Zach Charbonnet in this instance. So I think it's worth it around this spot.
So at the 110, you're taking Charbonnet. I'll just throw quickly around the room. If you have Walker on your roster, are you more likely to take Charbonnet around here, or does that push you away from having those 2 guys on your roster? You're like, no, I'm going to take the upside of a second-round wide receiver going to Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, it would push me more away. I don't like having obviously, you've got the insurance policy. One guy goes down, the other gets better.
It's a very good one.
Absolutely. I mean, because either one of these guys, I think, would be a top 10 running back if they were by themselves in this offense specifically. But they aren't, and I think you're going to have issues where you're forced to maybe, man, do I have to start both of them in the same week? I just don't enjoy playing that. I want the highest upside, which is Kenneth Walker, if he's on my roster, has a great year, and someone else I draft has a great year, and I get both of them good. I don't have to wait for an injury to be happy.
How about you, Betz?
Yeah, no, if I have him, I'm probably looking away from Charbonnet. It's tough to rely on 2 guys in the same backfield, like Jason said, on a weekly basis. But I get the argument for you have the guy no matter what if one goes down, which that's part of the reason you do take Charbonnet, right? Is like, this offense is going to be good. They want to get the running back involved. And Pete was praising Charbonnet's receiving game ability.
Yeah.
So I get it. But like I said, at the Dalton Kincaid pick, I am OUT in this range. I'm getting out of my rookie drafts.
Yeah, it is tough. And honestly, when we're sitting here at this spot, I had written down earlier in this episode a note for myself to move Charbonnet up in my rankings because I was looking at the running backs that are here, and I do believe that it would be wise. I like this pick. I think it is wise to remember that he is a second-round running back for a team that I think can have 2 relevant fantasy. There are multiple teams, many years, with 2 top 24 running backs in the same season. That's when they're both healthy. You have upside, and he's a talented player. He's not going to go anywhere. Now I'm on the clock. Charbonnet is gone, and I would agree with you. Rashee Rice is in consideration. Rashee Rice has Patrick Mahomes. He has good draft capital, a second-rounder. It would be between him and I think Devon Achane. Achane, was this a player I wanted to just – I wanted to body. I wanted to be like, no, it's not going to work. You're not 190 pounds. You can't have relevance. And he went to the most picturesque, perfect landing spot where he is in a fit to his running style like you can't imagine. And he will have massive breakaway touchdown runs. Like, that's going to happen. But I'm going to take this is a Dynasty League, second-round draft capital for Rashee Rice with Patrick Mahomes. I will take Rashee Rice here and stick to my rankings.
Yeah, Rashee Rice was somebody we have in our risers. His production was really good at SMU. So it's not like we're just getting a random player. But when you look at
this isn't McCole.
When you look at their depth chart, though, it's like we're playing the same game every single year. He was taken one spot after Sky Moore was in the second round last year. So it's like, is it Sky Moore? Is it MVS? Like, who is that person that kind of emerges? So I'm with you. I think it's a swing for the fences pick with Mahomes, but there's just a bunch of dudes.
We've talked about Lockjaw today, Terrace Marshall, and Mike's mentioned on the show a lot of times wide receivers that really fail their rookie year. They don't have to have a breakout, but if they really suck, it usually never happens. It doesn't come to fruition.
Cash out.
So Sky Moore, look, he's still got an opportunity. The depth chart is open for him. He's got Patrick Mahomes too. He had the second-round draft capital, but we have a year of him having opportunity last year and not hitting. So I do think that there's a reason they went back to the second round and drafted another wide receiver. And this was a wide receiver who was in Dallas working out with Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes has his mark on this. Mahomes told the GM he wants Rashee Rice. So those
careful with I've
dangerous.
been with that
Clyde
narrative
Edwards-Helaire.
before.
Yeah.
That turned into Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Jonathan Taylor.
That is fair. I don't know that I trust Mahomes' scouting as well as his quarterback play, but it is just one little cherry on top. It's not the reason I would draft him, but it is a cherry.
Do you think that Mahomes just watched that national championship game for LSU and was like, oh, that guy's good, get him, and just like, because I mean, that is a massive difference between Jonathan Taylor, who's one of the most talented running backs in the league, and Clyde, who's didn't get his fifth-year option, not going to be on the team next year.
He wanted a pass catcher, but then ironically, they didn't use him as a pass catcher. It made no sense.
No, it did not.
All right, Betz, finish out the first round.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to take whoever Jason didn't, so we can keep this short and sweet. I will take Devon Achane at the 112. He goes to Miami, and what I like about the landing spot, outside of the fact that it's obvious that, you know, it's Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson, and there's no elite guys in front of him, the path is clear, is Miami didn't have a ton of resources in this draft, and they still used one on this guy, and Mike McDaniel looked excited, to say the least, about picking him. He didn't break the table like Dan Campbell, Guns Mahoney did with Detroit and Jahmyr Gibbs, but they were still very excited. And so, yeah, this is the range where I would take him anywhere from like 110 to 112, even 2.01 if he falls. So Devon Achane off the board.
To be fair, I don't think Mike McDaniel could break the table if it was made out of paper.
The table is very contentious.
I love that dude, but he is an itty-bitty guy.
Yesterday, I was in a draft, and I was deciding between two players. Achane was one of them. I asked Mike his opinion. I asked Betz his opinion real quick, and I went back and forth for an hour between Devon Achane and Kentry Miller. I feel like those are the two right now where you're trying to decide, and it broke my heart because I wanted to be against Achane, like you said. Like every reason going into this draft was I want to be done with him. I chose him for my team. He's going to be a fun player, and after finishing the first round, I need to hit this drop.
Maka laka ding dong.
Yes, sir.
Just to wake us up, because we're getting to the second round here. So breathe with us. Mike's going to start us off at the top of the second round. Go for it.
I have moved this player up. He could have been my answer for the someone that has moved up the rankings a lot for me. It is Marvin Mims, who was drafted by the Denver Broncos. He came out of OU. His athleticism is off the chart, a 4.38. He's 5'11", 183, but again, most players in this draft were a little bit smaller. Lightning fast. Goes to Sean Payton, who we have a very long history, including Drew Brees, of course, but a very long history of Sean Payton having top tier fantasy wide receivers. and the Broncos had their picks were gone. Their picks were used on Russell Wilson and bringing in Sean Payton. And then with that limited draft capital, they said, now we're going to get Marvin Mims. And the swirling rumors of, will we trade a wide receiver? Those aren't going to go away. Yes, they picked up Jerry Jeudy's fifth-year option, but Marvin Mims, to me, I think the floor, this could be a disaster. I do think that the floor is very low, but if he hits, I think he can be a superstar wide receiver with an offensive mastermind. And in just a couple years, this wide receiver room for the Denver Broncos is going to look completely different. So I'm not letting that slow me down. I love Mims here.
Yeah, we can't just copy and paste what we saw in Denver last year and say this is how it's going to work. But it's a crowded room, like with Jeudy.
For now.
Jeudy, they picked up his option. Cortland Sutton, who knows? Tim Patrick. But I agree.
They can get out from everybody after next year.
And who knows? Who knows what Sean Payton wants to do with this team? But I'm buying into Denver. At least there's a lot of buy low and best ball and lots of other places. But Marvin Mims, we liked him pre-draft process. I'm going to go Kendre Miller. I just talked about him. 202. He was taken 71st overall. You just mad at me?
I am very mad at you. That was the only player left on the board that I really wanted.
So when I was debating between A-Chain and Miller, it's if I want somebody that can potentially be a 3-down guy, Miller's the dude. I can get that. He has the body. The situation's kind of weird because we don't know with Kamara. And then Jamal Williams' contract is basically 2 years, but it's still team-friendly for that third one. I was shocked for somebody who's 28 years old who got a 3-year deal. So I wish Jamal Williams wasn't there. If he wasn't there, How high would Kendre Miller go?
I think he would go near this spot. I don't believe it would be oh my gosh, Jamal Williams is the reason that I can't love Kendre Miller. Kendre Miller is great. He is also very, very young, which is outstanding for, when you have a running back play their rookie season at age 21, that has a really high hit rate because it's just rare for someone to be good enough to be drafted that age. And so I'm a big fan of Kendre Miller. With him off the board now, I feel like I'm looking at the probability outcomes of everybody else. We've got just this shotgun approach we can take. This is where, honestly, if you wanted to start going, because we had a handful of guys there, Marvin Mims, Kendre Miller, A-Chain, Rushy Rice, Mingo Charbonnet, that I
Rushy.
That have a decent hit rate. This is where I might go with a Dalton Kincaid if he was still available. Obviously, not. But I'm gonna go Bryce Young because Bryce Young has a guaranteed leash here. He's the number 1 pick in the draft. So instead of taking a shot on someone I really like in Tajay Spears, he was a day 2 pick. Obviously, he is behind Derrick Henry, so there's some questions there. I really, really like just taking someone at such a random spot where you're probably not going to hit on this player and saying, you know what, how about I just hit on the player? And he might not be a superstar or great for fantasy, but he will be relevant. If I have an injury to a quarterback, I've got a player that can go in, and he's going to play for a long time.
In the main Ballers Dynasty League, that Jeremy and I took him right around this spot, and we felt really good. This is a player. The ceiling might not be as high. It might be really bad his rookie year, but you can count on it. So I think this is the right range for him. Betz, you are at 204.
Yeah, this is the player I brought up at the start of the show when we talked about who is rising up draft boards. I'll take Jaden Reed here at the 2.04. Honestly, I've seen him go later. You guys mentioned the 2-3 turn. I've seen him dip into the third round a couple times in my draft. So he's a guy that I think you can get anywhere in this kind of second round range if you're looking to trade up and snag him. So yeah, 2.04, more than comfortable embracing some of the risk. The hit rate is terrible in this range in rookie drafts, but we talked about the situation, talked about the player a little bit, so I'll throw a dart on Jaden Reed.
And I'll jump in on next. It's about that time of where I don't love any of the picks, and I'm just going to take some value of if C.J. Stroud works out and becomes a true franchise quarterback like I think he is. Pre-draft, he was my favorite quarterback. So I will take the chance here. This is the Jason Moore special of when you run out of positional players that you feel confidence in, at least slightly, just take a quarterback who was drafted number 2 overall and hope for the best, because that is a much wiser thing to do than to at this point, in my opinion, start taking some gambles on like a 4th round run. Like Roschon Johnson's, I don't know if he'll go in our 2nd round, but his value is all over the place.
Yeah, we've been in drafts where he's going to the back of the 1st,
and it's like that's wild to me. That could pay off, but that is the ultimate lottery scratcher ticket where I feel like grabbing C.J. Stroud right here is he's going to hold value, and if he turns into what I think, then it's a massive hit.
In my research, it's in one quarterback leagues where people feel like I'm not supposed to take one because it's not as important, but you're getting all this value for players that you love. And so, yeah, you go back through the picks of the last 5-6 years. It's like Patrick Mahomes in one quarterback league was going 2nd, 3rd round.
Joe Burrow went at the end of the end of the 1st round in our Ballers Dynasty.
Yeah, they just keep sliding. At 206, there are 2 running backs that I'm choosing from, and I will say, if I wanted to, I could just sort by Jason's ranks and just take.
Hey, pro tip: if you're playing with a professional in the industry, just use their rankings.
I'm going to take the player that's probably not highest. I'm going to take Tank Bigsby, who I know you like pre-draft process.
He's my 2nd highest left. Thank you.
I know who your first one would be. I just like Tank Bigsby better than Tyjae Spears. Just personally, just from my evaluation, I think he can be a better NFL running back. I have some questions about Spears. I don't think it's a bad pick, but this is the spot where you're taking a shot on one of these running backs. The wide receivers fall off even more. Like there's another tier break, and I'm still not ready to take one of these tight ends. So I will take Tank Bigsby at the 206.
Yeah, I mean, you really want, you're talking about Roschon Johnson. The difference between a 3rd and 4th round pick is drastic. It's the difference in a day. It's the difference in assumed capital. GMs go into day 2 with a high importance on these picks. 2nd, 3rd round picks are seen as premium picks. Day 3 picks are like special teamers, fill out a roster, and those guys are just replaced so much easier. So I like Tank Bigsby, a 3rd round pick, and I like Tyjae Spears, a 3rd round pick. I did have Tank ahead of Tyjae in the pre-draft process, but when I look at would I rather play behind Derrick Henry or would I rather play in a dynasty format, play behind Travis Etienne? I think one of their careers will be over sooner, and Tyjae has a path to next year just being the dude. And
I think Tank will split immediately.
Yeah, he probably will. And I would guess that if you're going to say who has more fantasy points this season, probably will be Tank Bigsby. Tyjae isn't a pick that you're saying, oh, man, I got a starting running back now. No, that's called Derrick Henry. You've got Derrick Henry's backup. But Derrick Henry himself, when he was drafted, he did nothing his rookie year. That was called DeMarco Murray. And then if you picked him and held on to him, it was good. Obviously, at 201 pounds, Tyjae is not quite Derrick Henry.
Yeah, and real quick, too, before I move on to my next pick, there is a lot of talk these days about Spears and his knee issues from college. It's really confusing that the Tennessee Titans, who I think have a lot of holes to fill and plan for their future, used a pick on this guy because there's reports of, the previous ACL injuries. He's got 2 of them, and apparently he's already dealing with arthritis in the knee. We saw what that did to Mr. Todd Gurley very early in his career. So if you are someone who's 2 years away from competing in your dynasty league, I'd be, not relying on Tyjae Spears long term. I'll just say that. I don't know how long he's going to play, but the knee is definitely a concern. So
it was
in the second round, though, right? There's like no, I guess, negativity to your roster to take him because the hit rate's so low anyway. It's like, I like the guy, I'll take him, but just point that out in regards to his knee issues.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, I don't have a problem if you're a GM saying, well, we only get this guy for 3 years. Let's just run him into the ground. It's a running back. That's what you do now. But why do it when you've got Derrick Henry? Like, when it happened, I had a thought of, will there be a Derrick Henry trade coming? Because it seems like a weird medical situation to put a year wait on. But yeah.
It's more of a they watched Haskins play when Derrick Henry was out, and they said we're never going to do that again. We got there we go.
We're done.
I mean, look, nasty boy Hassan Haskins, dynasty champion.
I just want to add this about the Titans. They have been arguably the worst team in terms of draft and what they've gotten back in return. Like, they blew a first-round pick for Isaiah Wilson. They've done a pretty bad job. This is a new GM, Rand Carthon. He was a former running back. So I trust, like, what they're seeing but it is like a lot of red flags of like, we were told something about this player medically, but the NFL teams, they probably know medical stuff better than us, right?
Yep.
All right, Betz, you're up.
I hate this pick. I really do. I really don't know who to take, and I've been kind of staring at a couple names, and I guess I'm the tight end guy, so I will take Michael Mayer, a.k.a. Jaws, at this pick, who we previewed on the tight end show. You can listen to that. It's confusing that, Sam Laporta went ahead of him. I guess the Lions definitely valued him more, but Mayer's a guy that was considered, is it Kincaid? Is it Mayer? Is it Kincaid? Is it Mayer? He didn't go that far after Dalton Kincaid, and so you're getting a huge drop-off in where you have to take him to get him on your roster. You sit him for a couple years, you hope he turns into something. You don't be shocked if he doesn't, but he goes to Las Vegas. They don't really have a tight end to speak of that he's going to compete with now that Darren Waller is out the door.
Yeah, and the Raiders traded up to grab him because he should not have been at that spot. Laporta going ahead of him. I love Michael Mayer, and this is the spot where, I don't blame you at all for taking a Michael Mayer. Usually I would want these tight ends in the third round, but I think we're at a point in 2023 where the back of the second is you're looking at like 15% hit rates here.
Yeah, it's pretty low. Mike, 209.
All right, at 209, I'm going to take the guy that, Kyle, you took in real life. I will take the shot on the tiniest of tiny little baby boys. I will take Nathaniel Dell, wide receiver.
He's a tank.
He is. He's a little baby tank. And by that I mean 165 pounds. Not his athleticism is not outrageous, but back-to-back years of over 1,300 yards, double-digit touchdowns in Houston. That is a production profile that I don't think should be ignored. The Texans did not ignore it when they drafted him high in the third round, so still a day 2 pick. And again, gets to grow with C.J. Stroud. And at this point, the wide receivers left, I'm just like, I don't love any of them, but all the running backs at this point are now backups. You've taken the primo tight ends, in my opinion. I know there's one more that other people will probably be clamoring for, the Lions fans especially. But I'm going to take Tank Dell right here.
I like it a lot. He's kind of dropped in a lot of rankings, like even on Sleeper, he's like pushed way down there, but third round draft capital, like you mentioned. And what is their wide receiving core in the Texans? Like, I don't know what John Mechie is yet.
Right.
Nico Collins has kind of proved to us, like, okay, you're just a big body dude. That's it. Robert Woods and Tank Dell. Like, I don't know who's the one.
What you just described to me was, all right, John Mechie, let's go.
Yes. I mean, I'm hopeful for Mechie
for
still.
Sure. But it's an offense, when I'm like piecing out Stroud and Young, like, I think this offense could be really bad for a couple of years. And when you miss out on some heavy draft capital trading it away, like, this team is not ready to compete still for a couple years. They got 2 great picks at 2 and 3 overall. But when you're at this point, you're drafting based on what you think they can be. And Roschon is in play for me here. Like, in some drafts, he's going in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And that is insane to me. So I don't mind him in the back of the second, but I will probably be taking Sam Laporta here. I think that he can be the tight end 1 in this class. I'm not declaring it, but the opportunities there, their tight ends there are a joke. Brock Wright and James Mitchell, who are just nobodies. So Sam Laporta has the opportunity. We were shocked that he was taken before Michael Mayer, and Iowa tight ends are just awesome and in general.
Yeah, they breed them right there.
They do.
I mean, they know how to make them into men. I love taking Iowa tight ends. I was between those 2 players. I would have taken Roschon Johnson ahead of Sam Laporta, but that was my decision, so it's easy for me here. Roschon Johnson, this is where he should be going. He was the backup to Bijan. He's a big-bodied guy. He could catch the ball, and right now the Bears don't really have a pass catcher. You could say, is Khalil Herbert the starter? Is Deonta Foreman the starter? But those 2 guys aren't that much to, in theory, bypass on the depth chart. And he could come in right away as someone who could pass protect, catch the ball, and be the third down back and maybe even a goal line back. So Roschon Johnson, not a bad pick at the back of the second.
Where's the earliest that you would take him? Because like I said, people are saying he's the dude. I'm going to jump in there and take him at, I'm seeing him at the 110 in some places.
If this was my draft, I would have taken him over Tank Dell over Nathaniel Dell, but right around here. So 209.
I've found myself with the running backs of where they went, where the draft capital was, and then let me jump in real quick this will be another interesting experiment of the Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs notwithstanding, the running backs going later and later in drafts. Perhaps that is the new normal of we've always been. You got to be a day 2 guy. You got to be day 2. More and more of these day 3 guys could emerge as the running backs are kind of appropriately valued by the NFL. But I've, other than like I like Kendry Miller and Charbonnet and things, but I've found myself just out. Give me a second round wide receiver. Give me one of the third round wide receivers. Even Michael Wilson out of Arizona, or got drafted by Arizona. I had no idea who he was until the NFL draft. But it's still, I'll take that over these surefire backup running backs at this point.
Are you sure the Cardinals know who he is?
No. I think they may have turned in the wrong draft card.
All right.
Michael Wilson? Who's that?
Betz, finish this off.
I will close this off with Mr. Relevant in this draft, Jalen Hyatt, 212. We talked about him on the preview show for wide receivers. I'm not a huge fan, but when you look at this part of your rookie draft, like you're taking a guy that you can see the path and you can see the upside, and you look at what is on the Giants roster, it's a bunch of guys on short-term deals that are small slot wide receivers. So I know he'll be there next year, and I can't say that about other guys on the list here. So I will take Jalen Hyatt, hope for the best, and plug my nose doing it.
All right, so we'll post that on the website, but we're gonna have one more segment here.
Take it or leave it.
All right, this is just a late round dart throw. So maybe somebody late third round in one quarterback drafts, or maybe even guys that are undrafted, and I might be battling you guys on the waiver wire for these guys. Yeah. Jason, who is your dude?
I am going to go with Chase Brown. He is in a situation behind
Cincinnati
Bengals. He's behind Joe Mixon, and he's got his own legal troubles. He was an extremely productive back who's pretty much a 90th percentile athlete. Not a good draft capital, but a great landing spot, and a name you should know, Chase Brown.
And
again, he is.
Yes, but on that depth chart is ridiculous. They could still move on. They might do a late last-second pivot away from Joe Mixon, and all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, Chase Brown's set up. It's still Trey Palmer for me. The location, actually going to Tampa Bay, I like it. Trey Palmer, yards per route run, target per route run, superstar. And what is the Buccaneers wide receiver room going to look like next year? So it's definitely a dart throw, and it's gross and it's nasty, but I'm interested in him.
All right, Betz, who you got?
I hate this. I'm gonna throw out Kayshon Boutte.
Oh yeah, that one is.
Who could not have had a worse pre-draft process. It was terrible. But went to the SEC, broke out early, and he goes to New England where there's just a bunch of random dudes on the roster. So could you see the path if he gets his head on straight?
They are pretty good at developing wide receivers there.
Oh, it's the best place to go if you're a wide receiver. But I've seen him go undrafted. If you only have 3 rounds in your rookie draft, I've seen him in the 4th round. If he slips through the cracks, I don't mind just throwing a complete dart there.
All right, I'm getting real nasty here. I'm throwing out Rams wide receiver Puka Nacua.
I love it.
Okay, who's on the depth chart there? It's really bad behind Cooper Kupp. It's Van Jefferson. It's
Skowronek.
It's
Skowronek.
Hey,
Tutu Atwell. I mean, there's nobody.
he's still there.
He's alive, man.
I thought you were going to say Stetson Bennett when you said,
No.
I'm going real nasty Rams.
No, so at least he has a chance. He's a big wide receiver, 6'2". He got hurt this past year at BYU, so that's kind of why he dropped pre-draft process. But he's explosive, and I trust Sean McVay. That offense also could be really bad. Outside of Cooper Kupp, they decided to give him no other weapons, Matthew Stafford. So we'll see. At the end of your draft, it's a dart throw, and who knows who's going to be there. It's fun. It's fun. It's really fun. All right, guys, we did it. We got through a mock draft, and next week we're going to be talking about some of the fallout from the draft. We'll be discussing that even more. Jason, happy birthday.
Oh, thanks. It was yesterday.
Poop and poo.
Thank you for tuning into the Dynasty Podcast. Make sure you go get your Ultimate Draft Kit at ultimatedraftkit.com. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.